So if you're transitioning, you're going from one type of thing, you're working on a job, and then you have to sit down and do admin work, and then you have to have a meeting, and then you've got more admin work. Those transitions can be particularly difficult. And then the dopamine side, you just flat out don't want to do some stuff. And it's really boring, and people say, just push through, just sit down and try harder, and you just can't do it.
So would you say that's a typical trait of somebody who has like some sort of neurodivergence, or would you say that's just typical of being a human?
That one's more typical of being a human, but I think with ADHD, we have bigger crashes.
Skye Waterson is an ADHD strategist, coach, and founder of Unconventional Organization,
a multi-six-figure business dedicated to helping ADHD entrepreneurs stay focused, build consistent revenue, and scale without burnout or overwhelm.
Give us a quick rundown as to what we're going to be talking about today and who we're going to be talking to.
Yeah, so I'm sort of an ADHD strategist. I help business owners who want to 10x without the chaos to grow their business. And my background is, this is my second business that I've run, but I've also been an academic. So I was an academic before this. I got diagnosed at the beginning of my PhD with ADHD myself. And so that really, threw me into a lot of research that became the basis of what I run today. I will say I work with about 50% non-diagnosed people who just resonate with the symptoms. But yeah, so today we're going to be talking about the strategies around executive functioning struggles, why it affects people, doing trades or tradies, because I work with a lot of those, and what we can do about it.
The reason that it sort of piqued my interest when I saw it come through was I was recently, towards the end of last year, I was in Fiji speaking at an event with the Master Plumbers Association of New South Wales. And one of the chairman was telling a story there at dinner one night, and he was saying how he was sitting around in the US with a bunch of extremely successful business owners, like everyone with sort of 100 million plus, annual turnover businesses. And somebody mentioned something on the table about ADHD, and Greg sort of went, "Oh, that's interesting. I've got that as well." And then he sort of thought, just out of curiosity, on this table here, put your hand up if you've been diagnosed with ADHD. And out of the 10, 9 of them had been diagnosed. Mm-hmm. And that kind of led him to this, I don't know, like this perspective of perhaps it's not, he's super successful himself as well, and I've heard this over and over again. It's kind of like when handled correctly, it kind of becomes this superpower. Mm-hmm. Handling it correctly is, as opposed to the missing part. Mm-hmm. And I've noticed as well as I get older, a lot of friends and colleagues have been late diagnosed with ADHD. And I sort of mentioned to you offline, like one of my former team members, he was a late ADHD diagnosis over the last 6 months. And he said, "Oh, you should go and do the test." And I did. And I was like, I lit up like a Christmas. And I do absolutely, like I have, like I've got to work very hard to stay focused. Like it's an ongoing thing for me. And I don't know if it's ADHD or whatever it is, but I feel like it's progressively gets harder and harder as I get older.
Yeah.
And I think it's very interesting because I know there's a lot of people out there. I have conversations with a lot of friends and colleagues and so on and so forth who seem to have, like even another colleague, a mate of mine that I went to school with, he was also a late diagnosis, and both of his kids are like off the rector, like they're just like, level 10.
It is genetic.
Oh, yeah, well, that's it, right? And his wife's like, "Greg, you got to go and get tested. Like this is 100% you." And he did. And again, he lit up like a Christmas tree as well. And he said, and then he got medicated, and he said like, he's never been so productive in his life.
Yeah.
He said it's just like, it was such a game changer. And I don't know, like I guess back in the day, like when I think about that and I think about, like my relationship with him and these other, friends of mine, like they've clearly always had it, but it was just never diagnosed. Like symptoms haven't changed.
No. They're still the same guy. No one's like, "Wow, you've changed," and then you got diagnosed. Everyone's like, "Yep, this makes sense." And
I guess now, like in my 40s, like when we were growing up and, we were like kids and whatever, like we did have, there were certainly kids at school and stuff that were diagnosed with ADHD, but not many. And certainly not as many of them that have now been diagnosed.
Yeah.
And I wonder, like it sort of made me think, well, has the diagnosis pattern slipped and become a little bit looser, or is it just legitimately now we know more about it, and now we can kind of, help people that, are on that path.
It's definitely, I think, an understanding of what it is different from what it used to be. Because it used to be just like kid in the classroom, won't sit still, can't handle this kid, they have ADHD. Now there's more of a conversation around the broader understanding of how it's affecting the person. So people who were distractible, mind wandering, but maybe they weren't like really disrupting a classroom, they're also getting diagnosed. So that's part of the reason. And also just more awareness. When I got diagnosed, there was hardly any information about it. And now it's everywhere.
So what does ADHD stand for?
So ADHD is basically hyperactivity, disorder. Right. Well, there's two kinds of ADHD. So you can have primarily inattentive, you can have primarily hyperactive, or you can have the combined type. So I have combined type. So those are kind of the three different ways you could have ADHD.
So you're attentive and hyperactive.
Yeah. Inattentive, primarily inattentive.
Because when I was growing up, I remember it was always ADD.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then it became ADHD.
Yeah.
And then it became ADDHD or something like that. And I was like, I couldn't keep up with it.
So, it's always shifting. Yeah.
Okay. So the difference is if you're attentive, you've got like that hyper focus on a task.
So if you have primarily inattentive ADHD, you're very distractible, but you're not necessarily resonating with the driven by a motor stuff. You're not necessarily hyperactive. If you have primarily hyperactive, then you are much more, you're the kid who's probably going to get diagnosed in school because you're like can't sit still. Just very disruptive, a lot of interrupting. And then if you're the combined type, you're kind of in the middle. You do a bit of both.
Okay. And do we know the science behind this and what's actually happening within the brain and like?
We know that it's got something to do with dopamine and and other things as well. But dopamine, the way it's being regulated, the way it's being processed in the brain, we know that there are differences between that for people who get the diagnosis of ADHD, people who don't. But we don't really know why. We know it seems to be genetic, and there's a lot of discussions. People talk about gut, people talk about sleep. There's a lot of things going on. But besides the fact that it seems to be very genetic, we don't know.
So dopamine is your your brain's reward system, right? It's like, essentially it's saying, okay, well, if something good happens, then dopamine is the chemical reaction.
Exactly. And the way I like to describe it is, there's this idea that when you have ADHD, and it's still, these are all developing, neuroscience is still understanding this. When you start a task and you have ADHD, you don't get that reward boost knowing that you're going to get a reward at the end that you do if you're neurotypical. If you don't have ADHD, your brain just kind of looks at you and goes, this sucks, I don't want to do it. And then at the end you get a reward, but it's not necessarily linked in the same way as it would be if you were neurotypical. So weekend rewards, these things we're not as motivated by.
When people talk about like being on the spectrum, or whether it's true or not, I'm sure like everyone is on the spectrum at some level, but some people have a higher degree than others. Is ADHD part of that conversation, or is that leaning more towards like autism and those kind of?
So that's more towards autism. So it's the autism spectrum disorder now. Again, things change in the system. And then if you were to talk about neurodiversity in general, that's kind of the big cloud, if you will, that includes like autism and ADHD and a whole bunch of other things.
Okay. Because I know I even have my cousin's son he's got autism, he's got ADHD, he's got like the full suite of the full trifecta with something else in there as well. I can't remember, but is it common for people to have both?
It is relatively common. It's something that is becoming more of conversation because in the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual that allows you to that where this stuff is being tested from, they didn't even let you have both until recently. You had one or you had the other. And so
Right.
a combined diagnosis wasn't even an option until about 2013. So this is something it's new.
Sounds like a woke movement.
I'm not sure. I don't know. It's definitely a shift, and I think a lot of people are getting it. For me personally, this is one of the reasons why I just, for me, it's like if you resonate with these symptoms and we can help you, then we'll help you. Whether you get diagnosed, it can take a really long time. Whether you're medicated, I personally am not medicated, but I know a lot of people who are, and it's great. Whether you have other things in the mix as well, it's all
Like
good.
what?
Like dyslexia,
Right.
dyscalculia, all of those kinds of things.
Okay. What's dyscalculia? I've never heard that. Dyscalculia.
That's like dyslexia for math.
Oh, okay. Is that people that just would struggle with numbers, but they're okay with spelling?
Yeah. So if you have dyscalculia, you could struggle with basic math. You could be pretty good with like more advanced stuff like computers and things, but just like basic math.
Is that
could be quite bad.
Would that be sort of relative to the likes of Albert Einstein? I heard that he flunked math at school because it was.
Yeah. Sometimes it can, like, apparently that is a thing. I haven't gone deep into dyscalculia, but that is a thing. Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. I guess as well when as brains develop, like when you're younger and you're sort of going through, and I often wonder this, like when I was at school, I was easily distracted. I was always on my scorecard, on my what do they call it? The reports, all this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I just wondered if maybe it was like a developmental thing as well, because as I've sort of, I could never sit down and read a book, whereas today I can, and I always wondered that.
Yeah. That one's in. I do not know the answer to that, because I know a lot of people who say they used to be able to read a book and now they can't. So
yeah. What are some of the typical symptoms then that just for the listeners and the viewers out there that are that are checking in today? Like I'd be curious for you to maybe identify some of those to see if anyone could resonate or relate to them.
Definitely. So the symptoms that we work with specifically are working memory struggles, which basically means if somebody shouts across a job site, "Hey, can you do this ABC?" and you say sure, and then you forget it immediately, that's a working memory struggle, and that happens a lot. Then we have timeliness. So you're, estimating a job and you estimate it to be, massively underestimate how long it's going to take. You do that regularly. Doesn't seem to make a difference. It's very hard for you to really get a sense of timing, which is obviously quite important with tradies. And if we're talking about, transition times, that's also a factor. So if you're transitioning, you're going from one type of thing, you're working on a job, and then you have to sit down and do admin work, and then you have to have a meeting, and then you've got more admin work. Those transitions can be particularly difficult. And then the dopamine side, you just flat out don't want to do some stuff. Right. and it's really boring, and people say just push through, just sit down and try harder, and you just can't do it.
It's interesting what you mentioned, the task jumping. I can't remember what you referred to as, but because I certainly relate to that. Like if I'm trying to go from doing something creative like a podcast or something along those lines, some sort of writing, and I jump into the next minute bookkeeping, and then I got to go back into anything creative. It's always a struggle. Or even in the afternoons, like I really struggle with like doing creative things within in the afternoon. I would rather allocate that time to like meetings or things where I don't really have to do anything, just sit there.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's kind of one of the things we talk about is, energy management, especially if you've got a system that's working well, how to balance your energy and your dopamine boosts and things like that to give you a bit of a more stable pattern than the up and down that we can have during the week.
So would you say that's a typical trait of somebody that's has some sort of neurodivergence, or would you say that's just typical of being a human?
That one's more typical of being a human, but I think with ADHD, we have bigger crashes.
Right.
And for people who resonate with a bunch of these things, if it sounds like it all kind of hits you, you're like, that's me, then what we can say for sure is you probably have serious executive functioning struggles. And sometimes that is because of ADHD. Sometimes that can be because of head trauma. sometimes occasionally someone will come to me and they say, look, I don't have ADHD, but I have all the same struggles because I have head trauma. And so that kind of stuff can happen. So the diagnosis side decides. Yeah.
Does head trauma mean they've had like an accident or something, or right?
Yeah.
And what if they've never had an accident and they still have troubles with that?
Well, then you should definitely go get a psychiatrist and find out if it's ADHD, because it might be.
Right. And so is it a psychiatrist that would diagnose that?
Yes. Yeah. So it's different in different countries and it is changing. Like I know in New Zealand, the GPs might be able to do it soon, maybe even now, I think. But generally speaking, it's a psychiatrist, and it's expensive and it takes a lot of time, which is another reason why I don't always require a diagnosis.
And so why would it take a lot of time to diagnose it? Like, is it not just a test? Like I did a test online and it told me.
Oh, yeah, of course. But it's a super long waiting list.
Right. So it's more the system, not the actual.
Yeah.
Not the process.
It's the system. Yeah.
Right. Same old story. So when these people, like when you're working with people that have these, like what are the typical constraints they're having that they're coming to you with? Like what are they trying to resolve?
Mm-hmm.
The more common
Usually
anyway.
People are coming to me because they have started their own business and they have built up, they have a couple of contractors, or they're, constantly looking for contractors, and they've got to a point where they're going, okay, everything is my responsibility. Everything feels like it's on fire. And I don't really know how to do any of these things. And there's a ton of stuff that I know I need to do and I'm not doing it. That kind of just overwhelm that can take hold. And there's a real temptation at that point just to get back to work and forget about it and go back and, get back on the tools. But in general, what I tend to help people do is navigate through that, understand how to build systems that are going to work for your brain, both to focus you and then also to focus your team and your business.
And so what are some of these tools and systems that people can deploy?
Yeah, well, the first thing that I love to teach is how to focus when everything is on fire. Because people usually come to me and they say, I'm super overwhelmed. I have a million tasks that I have to do today. I don't know which one to focus on. And so I actually have a system. It's called the 2-minute focus formula. I'm going to explain it now, but if you want the full copy, you can just DM me. You can DM me site on Instagram at Unconventional Organization. I'll give that to you for free. But basically what we're talking about is, okay, let's first of all do a brain dump of everything that is in your head. Not your task list that you've forgotten about, not your emails, just what's in your head. And from there, we want to put that down somewhere you're going to use again. And we want to go, okay, from everything on this list, what actually has to be done today, or there will be a significant negative consequence. And I usually, to help people kind of think of this, I say, okay, well, if the day went sideways and you ended up in a waiting room for some reason, what are the things that you would still either have to finish on your phone, or you'd have to contact someone and say, hey, I'm not going to be there tomorrow. I'm not going to be prepped for this because I'm here. Mm-hmm. Those are the things that are truly urgent. And for most people, there's less than 5.
Interesting. And so it's a case of, I suppose, taking it out of your head, getting it on paper, and then just scoring it.
Yeah, getting it out of your head, the working memory struggles that we have there. And then from there, kind of going, okay, this is the stuff that's truly urgent. Everything else is someone else's urgent, or I just kind of wanted to do it because then I could tick it off and I'd feel good. And then from there, what we understand is, what is the 80-20? What is the 20% thing that's going to have the 80% return in your business? Building a pipeline for hiring guys. Building a system for, actually getting your quotes done. I was listening to you talk about that, getting them done fast enough, like looking into those kinds of things. That stuff is going to be your 80-20. Well, once we discover sort of what your 80-20 is, then it's about going in and saying, okay, that's what you should be focusing on with the time you have left. You're doing the urgent stuff. Let's spend the rest of the time focusing on that really important needle moving stuff. And that's usually where people go up against it and they go, okay, cool. So I don't want to do that. And that's where we come in with a focus filter and help you actually do things you don't want to do, even with ADHD.
I mean, I feel like that's kind of a metaphor for just business in general, like identify all the things you have to do, and then through optimization, improve the way that you can do them through process and technology and whatever it might be. Outsourcing.
Exactly. And ignore a ton of stuff, because the problem is as well, we're kind of idea machines. We have amazing ideas and thoughts, and what if we did this, and maybe we should try this, and this should be done. And so a lot of times what I'm doing is I'm kind of teaching people how to ignore everything in the middle, so that they're only doing urgent, important as much as possible. And then we can talk about delegation and hiring and ADHD friendly systems for, running a team to do some of that other stuff. But a lot of times it's about navigating with that focus, which can be so easily lost if you're doing it by yourself. And especially if you are trying to do it sort of a more traditional way, where they're just like, finish your list and then you'll be done.
And do you typically advise that people like implement some sort of like technology checklist, project management tool or something along those lines for this, or does it not have to be that?
Yeah, so I'm pretty system agnostic. I get this question a lot, and my thing is always use whatever system works for you. Especially because a lot of people will have sensory processing issues. Some people will have to have it on paper. Some people love technology. Some people are a combination of both. But it has to be ADHD friendly. That's the key. So many guys I know are using a bunch of apps that I'm not going to name any names here, but there's a ton of apps out there that are getting zero implementation and have been, bought and used, but they're not being used actively by guys. They're just kind of there.
Well,
and
that's the crux of technology, really. Like, it's all about adoption and
exactly.
I think whether people are ADHD or not, like we see it all the time, even through, like one of the softwares that we equip business owners with, like it's very common for them not to be using it to capacity, and that's an adoption conversation. But at the same time as well, because some of these technologies and tools can do so many things, it also, if you try to move too quickly on the implementation of all of the aspects, then you end up with this paralysis where nothing gets used anyway, because it all seems too hard. So sometimes it's easier to do it gradually.
No, 100%. It's actually funny you should mention that, because one of the things that I do for some businesses sometimes is I'll help them with their clients' adoption processes, because it's so difficult, especially, if you're business owners and you're really busy and things like that. But yeah, I would say in terms of building out a system, I personally have 3 systems, 6 routines. I don't teach like a million tips, anything like that. And so for me, it's like, can you focus yourself, which is, the prioritization filter, which you sort of started on today? Can you focus your business, which is building a system, but also wanting to look at your SOPs? We do talk about SOPs. I have a super fun way to talk about SOPs. No one believes me until they see it. It's visual. It's great. I was talking to somebody from Profit First about it just the other day, and they were like, this is great. Yeah. Helping with their processes and stuff. And they were like, this is great. So, we look at that kind of space. How do we set it up so that it's red light, green light, orange light, visual for you? And then how do we build it so that you have the metrics locked in? And this is where we work with, whatever kind of metric system you're using. That's cool. How do we make sure you use it with your team every week? You're looking at those numbers. You're not in control of all the numbers. You have other people who are being assigned to those numbers. They're responsible for it. How do you build a super simple cadence that you can use to run a $1 million business? Like, that's what we want. That makes a profit.
Profit. Like, I know myself, like I have, like once I'm in focus mode, I can focus, but getting myself into focus mode is often like the part of it. And these books on flow state and all these kind of things. And I've kind of got a few tricks that seem to work okay for me, but still, like, that's like the hardest part for me to get really in the zone with something, especially if I'm like jumping from one type of task into another, which is kind of although I plan around it, it sometimes happens regardless. Team meetings pop up, all that kind of carry on.
Yeah. This is a great question. I've been doing this step into focus routine, again, based on the research, but I've been testing this for multiple years now. There's 3 reasons that we struggle to start a task. It's too boring, it's too confusing, or the last time we did it, somebody yelled at us. It's got that kind of negative feeling around it, or maybe we hate, that kind of thing. So those are kind of the reasons that we won't do something. So what we do is we have a series of steps that take you from, I don't want to do this thing, no way, no how, to actually doing it in about 15 to 20 minutes. And so, the first thing you want to do is you want to give yourself a reward for sitting down to start the task. Because, kind of coming back to the previous conversation, we don't get that dopamine boost as much as other people at the beginning of a task. So we want to say, okay, the first thing I'm going to do if I'm sitting down to do some admin or, set out some, information for job sites is I'm going to go in and I'm going to say coffee, maybe sit in a comfy spot that I like, listen to some music. This is where people go, I have no idea what I like, which is something we help people figure out. And then from there, you're like, oh, this is pretty good. I'm like watching something, listening to something. This is good. I'm going to dial that down, maybe switch down to just the music. And from there, grabbing a little piece of paper. And I do recommend doing this with physical paper, even if you have lists, and writing down a little recipe of exactly what you're going to do during this work session, as if you're writing instructions for somebody else, and that somebody else is you when you forget in 5 minutes what you were doing. Yeah.
It's kind of, I suppose, similar to what I've learned over the years with, like, starting with, okay, what are the things that I need to check off the list today in order of importance?
Yeah.
And then I'll do the same thing, and like to get focused, I'll put some sort of like headphones on with not music that I know, but just like noise music, something that I can't sing along to, because that was always a distraction, and I'd be like, gone again. And then, identifying, like, I'll always start with like the greater topic and then break down the things that I want to.
Yes, exactly. And what you're doing is you're supporting your working memory.
From copywriting, like I learned back in the day, like if I was going to write a blog or something, or anything really, the best way for me to do it is come up with the topic and then break it into subheadings, sub-subheadings, sub-subheadings. And then I would just be able to write on that, and I would just go straight to those topics and those bullet points, and it would be no problem. But if I tried to do it the other way, it would just turn into this shitstorm of unproductivity.
Yeah, it is. It is very much from that. I think that's where we see it. But it is, and the fact that you figured out that works for you makes a lot of sense, because your brain is just naturally trying to do it that way. For a lot of people, they're resisting something their brain actually wants them to do because they're like trying to do it the way they've been taught. And so, it feels like a waste of time, but it's really not. It's very helpful. And then from there, we're just, opening the application, tinkering around in there. No pressure to get started yet. Just opening it up, writing a heading, writing some stuff down, reviewing what you were doing before. And at that point, you've turned off distractions, which is a step that I missed in the full one, but at some point you turn off those distractions. You've given yourself a reward for starting. Yep. Yep. You've given yourself a reward for starting. You know exactly what you're doing, and you've already opened the application. Inertia tends to go the other way.
Yeah, I think that's a really big thing. Like I'm like a do not disturb fiend. Like I mean, and one of the I won't say arguments, but resistance points we get from like clients with this is often, well, I can't put do not disturb on because I can't answer my phone.
Yeah.
And then I normally say, okay, well, that's a good observation. That's probably the first thing we should take off your plate. Like, how do we deploy a system so that isn't the constraint? Because I know I used to be a plumber, and I remember when you're halfway up a ladder or digging a hole and the phone's ringing all the time, like you're never getting anything done.
Yep.
And I'm a pacer on the phone. Like I like to walk, and so I'm just like walking up and down job sites on the phone, and you feel like you never get anything done. One thing as well, which I've found useful for me is, and I don't know if this, I feel like you kind of mentioned it, but like the whole time blocking dynamic. Like again, this is probably as well. like an advantage of what I do today, where I'm sort of more office bound. Although I know the guys that do this very successfully on site too, where they'll just set timers and they'll say, right, for the next, 45 minutes, I'm going to be working on these site drawings, and this is what I'm going to be doing, or I'm going to be doing this, drainage, or what, no distractions, whatever it might be, But like that whole Pomodoro kind of style, because Pomodoro kind of, or for you guys that don't know, it's essentially like a mechanism which enables you to apply a focused amount of time on a singular task. Say, okay, I'm going to be doing stack work for 45 minutes, and then after 45 minutes, I'm going to take a 5-minute break, and then I'm going to do another one. And you just stay focused on the task. And within that 5-minute break, you can check your phone messages, or you can do whatever you need to do. But then you sort of refocus, and it's actually a big revelation I've had over the last few months. Was the like, it's okay to lose focus provided you have a process on how to regain it.
Yeah.
I think so often some people, they lose and myself included, a huge tendency to do this, like lose the focus and then just you're gone, and you just don't pull it back.
Yeah. And that can also lead to another thing, which I see a lot, which is you don't want to stop what you're doing because you're afraid you're going to lose the focus. If you feel like once you lose focus, it's over, what happens is you start working on something and you're in flow, and then you never want to stop. And so you spend way too much time on it, or you go way too deep into it and you were only supposed to do 45 minutes. That can happen to people as well.
Totally. Yeah. That's probably one thing that that I still struggle with, truthfully. Like I'll set an expectation timer on something and it will go over, and truthfully, I'm sometimes happy to go over on it because I know, sometimes when you start something, you don't fully understand the scope until you're like in the thick of it. You're in the trenches, and maybe that's one of those conditions you mentioned, like not understanding time frame. I don't know.
Well, it is a time blindness thing, although I will say the Pomodoro wasn't designed for ADHD specifically. It was actually designed by an Italian for studying.
Right.
So the idea of like 45 minutes, or I think they even do like 25 minutes and then a 5-minute break, because we struggle with transition time, that's generally too short for most people. So usually what I see people do is they'll use the Pomodoro to start, and then they'll spend a bit longer working on something, and they'll take a bit of a longer break because it's very hard to transition between one task and another in 5 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. And truthfully, I will normally run doubles. So I'll normally double.
Yeah, I hear this a lot.
And I've sort of got an app on my computer which I can dump all my daily tasks into, and I can tick them off as I go, and it will literally just roll into the next thing. As I progress, but it will still keep that time allocation true. So you'll still, if it takes you 45 minutes and you knock one over in 10 and the next one takes, is taking up the rest of the time, it's okay. You still take that break, but if you need it, that is. But yeah. Interesting. So what are the other, like I suppose in I know I've got some friends and colleagues that this has kind of led them into a bit of a depression kind of state. Like they feel this sense of hopelessness and insecurity and self-doubt, due to the fact that they've were until a certain point undiagnosed with these things. Does that play a big part in helping people understand that it's not like they're not on their own, and it's kind of normal?
Yeah, I think a lot of times if you haven't connected with other people who have a similar brain, it can feel like all the negative things that people said about you were true. And it can be hard because we're going through, rethinking about the things that have happened in the past. There can be a lot of regret about maybe why people have done this. A lot of times the people I work with are like being diagnosed, late 30s, 40s, 50s. And that can be really hard and emotional. And so one of the things I really like to do is, first of all, like, have people building a community. I have a community of entrepreneurs who have these kinds of brains, who struggle with these kinds of things. And what I've found is I can say, this is okay. This is a different way of working. We get those systems in and you're going to be you're going to be good. But until somebody hears somebody else struggling with it, that's not me. And then that's often where a lot of that self-confidence comes in. A lot of what people get as kind of a byproduct of what I do is the self-confidence and the ability to say, yeah, I need this and I need this and I need somebody to help me with my admin, but I'm good at this, this, and this. And it's just strengths and weaknesses.
I'm forever like amazed at the amount of like friends and things that I have that as we get older have developed these anxieties and these depressions and these, and I don't know if it's necessarily tied to anything specifically to do with like neurodiversity, but I find it kind of intriguing that as we get older, and maybe because you have more responsibilities and family and, you know, things like that, then all of a sudden just got so many of these friends that have started coming out with all of these, I've been diagnosed with depression and anxiety. And I'm like, what is going on? Like what? It just seems crazy. Like these people that seemingly you would, like back in the day, they would never have had those things and they've just started developing them. And it's led me down this path really now of like really trying to understand like, okay, well, if you've gone from not having it to having it and you've been diagnosed, and I feel like the Western medicine solution is always about, well, stay on this thing for the rest of your life. You know, but I feel like if they didn't have it, now they've been diagnosed with it. Like surely there's a way to go from being diagnosed with it to not having it. And I'm starting to, you know, read a lot of research and things on people that are actually doing this through like alternative style measures. And the reason I'm bringing this up, I suppose, because I'm just curious, like, you know, in the space of neurodivergency, are there ways that, you know, you see people that are treating it that are not conventional but having good results?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I would say that a lot of the times when I work with people, they don't want to take medication. Some people do, and that's totally fine. I've seen some people get really good results out of that. But
I mean, I can't imagine anyone really is like, oh, I'd love to be on speed for the rest of my life. I mean, that's pretty much what everyone is, right?
Well, like I said, you know, one of the interesting things about me, and I say this because I was talking to an MD from New York the other day who couldn't believe it, is that I have never taken ADHD medication. So I don't have that side of it. So for me personally, like my journey and the journey that I take people on is about learning the strategies and whatever else you decide to use to supplement that, you know, movement, exercise, you know, nutrition, all of those kinds of things. It is about understanding how your brain works and having those strategies that you can have as a baseline. And I've heard from so many people, it's like, and then I got divorced and then something happened in the family and then, but I had your systems and I was able to, like, at the end of the day, I could actually understand what I needed to do next, what I need to do after that. These things provide like a home base for just how you think about everything that you can use with your, you know, whatever you decide to do.
It's interesting, isn't it? You say that because you see and hear all the time, especially as people get older, the excuses that tie back to like their age. You know, oh, I'm just getting older. You know, oh, I'm never going to get back to that shape because I'm this age now. And meanwhile, it's just an excuse for them to sit on the couch and eat Doritos at night, you know?
Well, I will say, you know, I'm heading towards 50 is often a reason that people work with me. They're like, that's it. You know, I want to make sure that by the time I am, you know, we talk a lot about this idea of reaching your potential. People often have the sense of what their potential is and they have it like in their head and they want to have a really solid go at reaching that potential and doing what they can. And a lot of times that's why people come to me, they say like, I'm 47 now. I want to get to 50. I want to feel confident.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I just think there's, you know, I think by design, perhaps as a design fault, probably better put, we like to make excuses for the reasons why we can't do things. And in most cases, I see those same excuses are normally the reasons for why we should be doing those things. and it's interesting what you said about diet and activity and these kind of dynamics, because like this is truthfully, now that you say it, it's making me realize that perhaps this is one of the reasons why I'm seeing so many of my friends and stuff like that are being late diagnosed with, depressions and anxieties, it's because they've stopped playing sport, and then they use, I'm busy with the kids as an excuse to not train and not eat properly. And, then it's like this waterfall effect where all of a sudden, all these things are kind of dominoing to, well, now you've got depression. Congrats. It's like, shit. So I guess the overall question is, in the interest of prevention and preservation, I imagine part of what you teach and train people to do is to make time to do these things which can prevent.
Definitely. I mean, definitely we make a lot of time to, do things both. So I would say two things. One is, kind of three things. I say, first thing I always say is like, you're probably working about as hard as you can, because everybody, especially every guy, wants to be like, I just have to push through. I just have to work harder. It's like, hang on. If it was going to work like that, it probably would have done it by now. So usually I'd say, you're working about as hard as you can already. The second thing is movement, super important. Obviously, nutrition, health, that kind of stuff as well is good. And we work with some, really amazing people I know who are ADHD nutritionists. But, it's also the dopamine side. You probably aren't, whoever, is listening to this, getting enough dopamine. You might be getting it through your phone, and you might think that you might be getting it through other things that you're not, happy with. You're still probably not getting enough, because if you think about all 5 of your senses, touch, taste, sight, smell, sound, like, are you really in an environment that is creating stimulation and dopamine at a level that you're happy with in a whole variety of ways? For most people, the answer is no. And I've worked with all kinds of people. Often what we're doing is we're using our phone, and we're using something like scrolling, or we're using, sometimes it's drinking and things like that. And we're using that as like our sole source of dopamine. And that can cause a massive problem, because one of the things I say is we take our fun as seriously as our work, because we have no choice if you have ADHD.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point. Like I noticed, I took Instagram off my phone months and months and months ago, because we get sucked into this vortex. And maybe you're right. Maybe it was like a dopamine, that's kind of their model, right? Like that's no secret.
Yeah.
And I've noticed since I'm kind of spewing now, because Danny, my content girl, she's like, no, you've got to get it back on, because I need you posting. I'm like, I know. And you can't post stories.
The same problem.
I'm like, this sucks, and I don't want to do it. But like, and it's a hard thing for me, because as soon as I open up that app, it's like, I feel like I would have to be super disciplined and just be like, I'm not going to look at anything. I'm just going to post and then move on. Like I'm so, I guess everyone is, the reason those apps are so addictive is for that exact reason, right? Like people think that is and you don't have to go far to see it. Like I'm always amazed, like I take the kids to the park and I'm sitting there and I'm watching them play, and like literally 9 out of 10 parents are sitting there on their phone. Like they're so disengaged.
Yeah.
I take the kids to swimming lessons. All the parents are there on their phones. I'm just like, no one, it's unbelievable. Everyone's like zombies.
Well, the thing is, and this is really important, is, often what people think of is the solution. I actually have a whole article I wrote on this. You can DM me on Instagram. I'll give it to you as well. But it's, it is really this concept of, okay, cool. So we've got like the phones are the dopamine distraction right now for everyone, particularly if you have ADHD though. If we get rid of the phone, like we don't want to just have less dopamine. We're already understimulated. We want to replace it. So it's about replacing it with stuff that is better, stuff that is healthier. So for a lot of people, I have very real conversations. It's one of the cool things about what I do, about people who are like, look, I want to play with my kids, but it's just a little bit boring. That happens. I have that conversation with people a lot, and we talk about how to make it a little bit more stimulating, how to make it a little bit more interesting. Using, like going outside or throwing something around, or maybe putting on some music or whatever it is that's going to be helpful, because we want you to stay engaged and we want you to stay present when you get home. That's the whole point of getting focused when you're at work. And we don't want you to be, going on your phone, but we also don't want to just be like, so do nothing, because then we're just like just as bad as teachers being like, well, we're just going to put you in the corner with nothing and you have to focus now.
Yeah, it's a good point. Like, oh my God, I start sweating and shaking when my daughter gets home. She's like, Dad, can we play mums and dads? I'm like, oh my God, not again, please. Anything but mums and dads.
I hear this a lot. It's one of the great things about my job is like people can be very real and honest with me. And that's the conversation that we have. And so being able to have those honest conversations, it can be really like a relief for a lot of people. And then we have the strategies to help with that as well.
I honestly, though, do tend to feel like you would get even like when you're weighing up, okay, well, for me anyway, like sacrificing doom scrolling on Instagram for like playing mums and dads with my kids, I would still rather get a better outcome from that.
For sure.
And it's, it's the little things as well. Like, I would have dropped my daughter at school on Tuesday or something, and her teacher said, I asked Neve, what she did on the school holidays, and she said the best thing was when Dad didn't go to the gym one morning and took me for breakfast. Like, that didn't even register on my radar. But like these are little things that you can't really quantify, and especially when they're little, like they're so like and it made me think as well. Like I was thinking back to the things that I remembered when I was 5 and 6. And it was always these little things, It wasn't the big holidays we went on or something that someone bought me or whatever. It was nearly always something to do with time.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that's the tough thing is that a lot of us, especially when you're in that chaos, that's the thing you have the least of.
Before we wrap up, I'd like to sort of touch on how the people that have been diagnosed with ADHD, or maybe even people that haven't been diagnosed but seem to be, symptomatic, how they can really treat this to their advantage. And, I've just read so many books, and you don't have to go far with these people that have very clear, learning difficulties or neurodivergence, your Elon Musks, your Richard Bransons, like all of these guys that are insanely, well, it seems like the majority of them are insanely successful, to the point where you think maybe you need to have to get diagnosed to become successful, truthfully. But
maybe that's the reason.
Well, but, I mean, it might be, right? Like, it's, and I wonder. I mean, you look at the like my buddy Danny, like he's so like he's diagnosed ADHD, and he's like, you just got to stick me in front of a spreadsheet. And I will create something awesome. And he's like, I just focus and focus and focus.
Yeah.
And advantage is easier to get into flow state, easier to, to construct these things and get them all built out. Disadvantage, nothing else matters. Kids come up, go away. So kind of that gamut to run between, being productive and being a jerk. But regardless, like a lot of, I think, whereas there's kind of perhaps this, well, back in the day, certainly, this misconception of, well, if you've been diagnosed with this thing, it's kind of like a disability, whereas now I tend to feel like it's not that. It's just learning to deal with it, and it can play to your advantage pretty well. What's your take on that?
There's definitely some support for the benefits of ADHD. There's some research into it. There's a variety of different pieces. I think the one that stands out the most is the ability to problem solve and be creative, which is essentially just another way of saying we connect dots other people don't, and we tend to go broader and think differently. And if you're in a job where you have to think of new ideas, new ways of doing things, put two different things together, connect them, and do something no one's ever thought of before, that's incredibly helpful to be ADHD in that moment. It's the execution side can be tough, and that's where we need the systems, but that ideation side can be really good.
Got it. So people with ADHD are good at coming up with ideas?
Yeah.
But not so good at integrating? Especially
like for a lot of people, it's that last 10%. Sometimes it's the first 10% depending on the person and the task, but lots of times people are like, oh my gosh, this is such a great idea. And I started it. And now I'm like, my house is a mess. My room is a mess. My stuff is a mess. And I'm like, haven't finished the task and I'm just going to leave it. If you've ever seen the memes of like the half finished projects around the house, that's very ADHD.
My friend, my mate Nick, his wife calls him 90% Nick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, there you go.
Which is funny because he's actually got, his family has like a history of Asperger's. His dad's got it, his brother's got it. He definitely has it. Like, he is not diagnosed, but he knows it.
Mm-hmm.
I call him on it all the time. Is that neurodivergence as well?
Yeah, so that's neurodivergence, and you could totally have both. You could have ADHD, you could have Asperger's, you could have autism spectrum. Technically, they're both kind of combined now. It's a whole thing.
What do you recommend listeners and viewers out there that are resonating with this conversation do as a starting point?
Yeah, well, I mean, get diagnosed first. I would say probably look into it in the same way you did online. See if it resonates with you.
I question whether some of those tests, though, are like sort of steering you towards a product or something, like, oh, you've got this, sign up here.
Yeah, that is true. I think there's one, the one I like is the one by the NHS. So like look for something that's a little bit more government orientated. So, the government diagnosis of what ADHD looks like, you can find those around the world that kind of help you with not necessarily a questionnaire, but more of just like this is the criteria that you would need to meet if you were going to get diagnosed. And then from there, you can pursue a diagnosis. If you feel like you want to get the strategies either during or before, you can reach out to us on Unconventional Organization, or you can listen to the podcast. A lot of people find that really helpful. I have a podcast called the ADHD Skills Lab, and we go through this stuff and we talk about the research in detail, so you can kind of sort of step your way into it a little bit more. Yeah,
great. Well, I suppose like wrapping up, as I sort of mentioned earlier in the conversation, it's like 9 out of 10 $100 million business owners in the trade space at that dinner table had been diagnosed with ADHD. So if you're out there thinking that it's something that should be holding you back, it's absolutely not the case. So don't be disheartened by it. Just sort of embrace it and learn how to work.
Grow without the chaos.
Learn how to turn that into your superpower. And I think as I mentioned multiple times, you don't have to go far to find many examples of people that have done just that. And stories related. So great. Well, look, I'm going to link to all of your the website, Unconventional Organization, and things like that within the show notes. For you listeners and viewers out there, if you want to get hold of Skye, there's links to the podcast, there's links to some resources and things like that. ADHD focus filter. But yeah, that'd be super useful. And if you guys have any questions about this, if you have any I suppose any feedback or any experiences perhaps, with this yourselves. So just by all means, wherever you see this podcast come through, just leave some comments and I'm sure I can rubber arm Skye to coming back on the show and answering some of these.
More than happy to.
Yeah.
I love it when people just bombard me with questions. It's great.
Well, Skye, look, thanks so much for your time. It's great. You do what you do. I think it's very needed. There's a huge calling for it. I see it all the time. And again, like as soon as I saw this pop up, like it resonated with me because of these conversations that I'd had in the past. So thank you for sort of helping people unpack these things and turning them into their superpowers. Really appreciate that.
No worries. You're welcome.
Okay, listeners and viewers, that is a wrap. Hey guys and girls, how would you like all of the value adds left behind from our podcast guest all put together in the one spot? We've pulled every tool together, every template, every resource shared on the show, and we've packed them all into the Tradie Academy. It's free to join and it's built by the team behind the site Shed and Tradie Web guys. Inside, you'll get marketing tips, business tools, and first access to future resources, all in one simple dashboard. Just head across to tradie.wiki/pod. That's tradie.wiki/pod. The link's in the episode description. And once again, you just log in once and then you're all set. And if you want to get notified of upcoming episodes, hit subscribe or follow.